So good evening to all of you. I know there's still some folks joining the presentation, so we'll catch them up, or they'll catch up as they're joining. But do appreciate all of you taking your Thursday evening and going through. You know, as I indicated a couple nights ago, COVID has changed a lot of things, and one of the things that is changing is our rules clinic. Typically, we'd be in a group auditorium, group room with 50, 60, 70 of us, and that's just not possible. So we changed a little bit, and you know, we're using technology a little bit more, and that's what we'll do tonight, and you know, to continue the rules clinic. So I'm Mark Beal. I'm the district umpire in chief. I think I know everybody that names that I've seen. So appreciate again all of you coming on. Got a great group of individuals, as I said, watching the presentation, and then some very good people helping to present the information as we go through it, which I'm very happy to see. And actually the individuals that you see on the screen right now are the district umpire staff. So appreciate all the time and effort that they put in to bringing this presentation to the Zoom meeting we're doing tonight. There'll be a few of the staff that actually be presenting, and you see there myself, John Peretta, and then finally Rick Caston is going to help us moderate some questions and that as you go through. As you continue, what we ask is, with the group size that we're expecting, and you know, as I see, we have 23 individuals right now. We've got a larger group than we did on Tuesday, and with that, we ask any questions you have, use the chat function, type them into the chat, and we'll break during the meeting periodically and answer those questions. And then anything we can't answer tonight, we'll tell you how we're going to get those answers out so you can access it. So again, appreciate everybody you know, coming through, being here. And the first individual, Tuesday we talked a lot about definitions. We covered Rule 2 in depth, and you know, as I said on Tuesday, Rule 2 is a key, because as you go through and you start to get into the other rules, understanding key definitions, some key phrases, key terminology is critical. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Peretta, and he is going to take us through Rule 7, the runner. So John, it's all yours.
All right, well, thank you. And thank everyone. I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight. Hopefully you guys can pick something up and give us some feedback as well too, how we're doing with this. This is something new to us. We may use this format going forward. We have some ideas about using it, but like Mark said, please ask your questions using the chat function. But what we're going to try to do tonight is, when the presentation is over, if there's anybody that wants to stay on, we'll unmute you and you can ask some questions. So if you want to handle it that way as well too, but certainly there'll be times where you can ask questions. Rick will be feeding it to us, and hopefully we'll get them right this time. So anyway, so let's start with the runner. Next slide, please, Mark. Okay, so this one's 2 runners on the same base. If 2 runners occupy the same base, the trailing runner is out when tagged unless it's a forced play. One thing to remember about this, and this kind of confuses some umpires, is the very fact that 2 runners are standing on one base is not an automatic out. So you have to determine who's going to be out if an tag attempt is made. So basically, if you have to just keep in mind who has a right to the base. If it's a forced play, then the trailing runner, it has to move to that bag. If it's not a forced play, then the trailing runner didn't have to run. So it's also acceptable as umpires to make sure when making this call to be very definitive about who you're calling out, because you don't want both runners to leave the bag or the wrong runner leaving the bag thinking they're called out. So it's perfectly acceptable to really be emphatic on this call and say you number 5 or you, or really point you're out if there's a proper tag being made on the runner. But by virtue of the 2 runners on one base, it's not an automatic out. Something has to happen. And at the lower levels, it might take a little while for that to happen before someone realizes that, but let the play out. But be emphatic on your call when you make this. Make sure that the proper runner who's supposed to be out is out. Okay, next slide, please, Mark. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these base awards, because in certain situations, the base awards can be pretty tough on an umpire, and we'll get into that. But most of the time, as umpires for base awards, we're going to be dealing with a 2 base award, and that is generally a throw that goes out of play. There are 1 base awards, 2 base awards. There's actually 3 and 4 base awards. Bonus if you guys can answer what is a 4 base award. So, but anyway, typically what we're going to deal with is a 2 base award. So most of the time we're going to see that from the infield, but there's 2 considerations from that. And these are the things you really need to know as an umpire, because it's going to determine where you're going to place the runners, and that's pretty important. So both terms you need to know, the first of 2 terms is time of pitch or time of throw. Okay, those are going to determine where you place the runner. So you need to know that. So the time of pitch is only going to happen, this is the only time, if the errant throw is the first play by an infielder. And you're going to judge if that ball goes out of play. Typically what you will see on this play is the shortstop airmailing a throw over first baseman's head. And that's going to be 2 bases wherever the runners were at the time of pitch. Okay, so that's the first time by an infielder. So be aware that on a second, any subsequent play by an infielder is going to be time of throw. And when we're talking about time of throw, we actually mean when the ball physically leaves the hand. It's not when the ball goes out of play, it's when the ball physically leaves the hand. So on a double play, the first play, maybe you get the lead runner at second base. That first play, that's going to be, if their ball goes out of play on that play, time of pitch. But the subsequent throw, maybe from the second baseman throwing to first, if that ball goes out of play, that's going to be time of throw. And if you look at the approved ruling there, if all runners and the batter have advanced at least 1 base when an infielder makes the throw as the first play, the award is made from time of throw. Typically, you'll see that at the lower levels where they'll still make the throw, even though the batter runner may have reached first base or not. But there is a stipulation in there on that. So where it gets tough, this is where it really gets tough for umpires, is a throw from the outfield. So any throw from the outfielder is going to be a 2 base award. And remember, it has to be from when the outfielder throws it. And sometimes that ball can take a while to get to go out of play. And so the runners are more than likely advancing or possibly advancing, and you need to know where the placement of the runner. So umpire awareness is key on this play. Very difficult to do in a 1-man system. 2-man is a little bit easier. In a 2-man system, it's also, remember, it's perfectly acceptable as an umpire to get together with your partner and kind of decide where you think the runners were. So time of pitch is pretty easy if you remember where everyone is, but time of throw can be a little bit more difficult on that. But you need to know that, remember, when it leaves the ball's hand, not when it goes out of play. And you may be prepared to have a discussion with a coach about that too, because there can be a lot of conflicting ideas of where that runner was. So if the runner, this can help, I'll give you a little tip, this can always help you out. If you have runners on second and third, you never have to worry about them. They're always going to score, whether it's time of pitch or time of throw, okay? But if you have a batter runner, when the ball left the fielder's hand, the outfielder's hand, perhaps you don't know where the batter runner was. Was he at first? Was he past first? Does he get only second base? Does he get third base? So that's kind of a difficult one to do. So that takes a little bit of practice, and again, good umpire awareness. So next one, Mark. Okay, Rule 705, this is base award. So we talked about there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're just going to talk about one base. So this is one base if a pitch is thrown out of play. And you just have to remember on this one, there's an old saying, one from the mound, 2 from the field. So if the pitcher's on the pitcher's plate and say he does a pickoff to first without disengaging and airmails it, that's only going to be one base. If he disengages, it's treated as a fielder. He's a regular fielder like anybody else, and that's going to be a 2-base award. Okay. Where you really have to pay attention to this is at the upper divisions where there's open bases, because that's typically where you're going to have more of the pickoffs. But what you have to decide is, did the pitcher make his turn from the rubber, or did he disengage first? And that's going to determine the base award. On a left-handed pitcher, a lot of times they're just going to throw directly to the base. But a right-handed pitcher could either disengage or could do a jump step, which is considered from the rubber. So you need to pay attention to that when you are, especially on the big diamond. So keep that in mind, because it can make a difference in the game. All right, next slide. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is probably one of the biggest misconceptions about Little League Baseball. And there is no must slide rule. So let's talk, we'll spend a little bit of time on that, but remember that there is no must slide rule, okay? So basically if the fielder, the rule states right there, the runner does not slide or attempt to get, a runner is out when the runner does not slide or attempt to get around a fielder who has the ball and is waiting to make the tag, okay? So the fielder has to have the ball and is waiting to make a tag. So the runner can do one of 4 things. He can slide, and if he does elect to slide, he also has to do that legally. He can't go in spikes high. Attempt to get around the fielder. We're going to go back to this one, but attempt to get around the fielder. You can go back to the last occupied base, or you can give yourself up. So let's go back to attempt to get around the fielder, because this kind of confuses some younger umpires as well too. Notice it doesn't say anything about contact there. Okay, attempt to get around the fielder. So there could definitely be contact. And as long as it's not malicious, then we probably have nothing. So there can be contact, but it just says, it doesn't say to avoid the fielder or anything like that. Remember that, attempt to get around the fielder. So there's no must slide rule. So they have to do one of 4 things on that. Okay. All right, next one, Mark. All right, this one's pretty simple. This really applies only to majors and below, that a runner slides head first while advancing to a base. Majors and below, he's out, okay? And the ball remains live because we want to make sure that the defense can make plays on other runners as well. And as an umpire, it's a very simple mechanic. You can just verbalize, that's a head first slide, he's out, or you're out, or whatever. But you got to make it emphatic, because sometimes that's not going to end the inning, and people need to know, especially that runner needs to know he's out. And remember, that's only advancing to a base. Returning to a base, they can slide head first. So you have to pay attention to that, particularly in rundowns, where perhaps they're going back and forth and you're not sure, and they slide head first back to a base. But you have to keep that in the back of your mind. It's only when advancing in majors and below. Intermediate and above, it's game on. They can slide however they want. All right, next slide, Mark. Mark, oh, there you go. All right, so this is runner appeals. So this is another thing that can be a little bit difficult for umpires and newer umpires as well. So an appeal, you have to, we talked about this, if you were here last week, we talked about the difference between an appeal play and a force play. Okay, so appeal plays are typically for a missed base or leaving early. That's really when you're going to have your appeal plays. You can have an appeal for a check swing ball, but typically this is what you're going to use the appeal portion of the rule for. So a couple things to remember, keep in the back of your head. when you talk about appeals. No runner may return to touch a missed base after a falling runner is scored. So in other words, if bases are loaded and someone hits a triple, let's just say a triple is hit and I'm R2 and I miss third base and I come to score and R1 is behind me and scores, I can't go back and correct my mistake, okay? All right. And then when the ball is dead, this is particularly important in Little League Baseball as well too, because there are no dead ball appeals in Little League Baseball. It has to be a live ball. And sometimes the ball can become dead during the play. And so you need to keep that in mind, that all appeals are live ball appeals in Little League Baseball. So when the ball is dead, no runner may return to touch a missed base after touching the advanced base unless directed by an umpire because of some sort of infraction by the offense. And you always see this we always talk about fourth out considerations. We're going to talk about that in a second. But go to the comment first, and you just have to be alert, again, whether the appeal play is going to be a force out or a time play, because quite often a force out can sometimes erase a run off the board. And a lot of times a time play won't. You can get the third out, but you can't erase a run. And so that leads us into the fourth out considerations. You hear that a lot, and believe it or not, you can get a fourth out. And that can sometimes work to your advantage, especially as a manager or coach, because you can't erase runs off the board. So we always throw that out there, and we're going to have a slide for it. Mark and I just kind of talked about this today. We didn't get it, so I'm just going to kind of explain to you. I found one example of what we would call an apparent or advantageous fourth out consideration. So if you have a hard time following along, maybe get a pen and pencil and just jot this down. So in this situation, we would have R2 and R3. So runner on second, runner on first with one out. All right. So say the batter comes up and hits a deep fly ball to right field, which is caught for an out. That's going to be 2 outs, right? So now we have 2 outs. But prior to the ball being caught, both R2 and R3 leave early. So now we have 2 outs, and R3 scores and R2 is on third base. All right. Are we all following along? I hope. I don't get any feedback, so I can only look at your faces and see some of your faces and see if there's a deer in the headlights or not. But anyway, so if R3 has scored and R2 has advanced to second base or third base, but both of them have left early. So the defense appeals that R2 left early, and the umpire in a 2-man system, hopefully, was very diligent, and this would be the base umpire. It saw that he left early and calls him out. Now that's the third out, correct? So now we have 3 outs, inning over. But here's where the advantageous fourth out comes in. You can do another appeal of R3. And you could say, hey, I want to appeal that R3 left early as well. So you could get that out as well, and that means R3's run doesn't score. Now you could also do that on the reverse, because the ball was caught for out number 2. You could have just appealed R3 as well, and his run would have been erased as well. But in case you didn't, the defense just decided to do one or the other, or the R2 first, it still counts. And that's where that fourth out consideration comes from. There's a couple more examples. You can always look them up. You can always email us for that. But that's what we talk about when we talk about the fourth out consideration. So it is possible in baseball at all levels to get an advantageous or an apparent fourth out. Okay. Next slide, Mark. Okay, so let's talk about special pinch runner. Now, unfortunately, in our district, I think everybody does a continuous batting order, and that is an interleague play as well too. So most generally, you won't see a special pinch runner, because this only applies if you're batting 9 players. So where will you see this? even though we may not see it in the regular season, for those of you that are going to be all-star managers and coaches, you need to know this, okay? And for umpires, you're not going to see it during the regular season, but you're going to see it in all-stars, and you need to know how to handle it because there's some considerations, okay? So this is for only batting 9, all right? So you can basically, it's up there on the screen, once each inning, a player who is not in the current batting order, so basically a substitute that's on the bench, can be used as a special pinch runner for any offensive player, okay? And they can do it once per game, all right? Oh, go back, Mark. Sorry, you went ahead of yourself. Thank you. And then again, the SPR cannot be used in continuous batting order. This is in the rule book. It's pretty simple. You just, as an umpire, you just have to really keep track of it to make sure that it's only done for that player. So if you have managers and coaches, if you have like, you know, maybe not the speediest player and he gets on base, you can only do that one time per game, okay? And once an inning. And those are the considerations as well. So as umpires, you need to keep track of that on your lineup card and make sure that it doesn't happen again or doesn't get violated. So you need to know that and keep track of it. But basically, it's for all-stars. And if you don't plan on umpiring all-stars or coaching all-stars, you probably never have to worry about it. Okay, Mark, next slide, please. Okay, so this is a brand new rule here, and this is the courtesy runner. Okay, this is a brand new rule from Little League. So this is going to, it's designed as a speed up rule, but that's something else that we have to know about and treat it similar to the SPR, where you're going to have to record it on your scorecards. All right, so now you can use a courtesy runner. So basically the first portion of it, they're talking about when batting 9. So let's talk about when batting 9. So courtesy runner, a local league may permit. So your local league is going to have to vote on this. Your board is going to have to vote on whether you want to utilize it or not. Okay, but you can permit a courtesy runner for the catcher and or the pitcher of record when there are 2 outs. So you've got a catcher on base or your pitcher on base with 2 outs, you can replace them. So if you're batting 9, it's like an SPR. It's got to be a sub, someone who's not in the batting order. And you don't remove the pitcher or the catcher from the game. This, like I said, this is just a speed up rule. I don't know why they need to do it for the pitcher. I can see for the catcher, so he can get his gear on. It just gives them an extra step to get on. But it's like an SPR. They're not removed for the game. It's just a courtesy runner. And the third bullet point there, the same courtesy runner may not run for both the pitcher and the catcher at any time during the game. So the same courtesy runner can run for the pitcher repeatedly, but can't do pitcher and catcher. The same runner could run for the catcher repeatedly, but you can't switch for some reason. I don't know why they do that. And again, in the courtesy runner, same thing as an SPR. Courtesy runner needs to be reported to the plate umpire. You need to make a notation on your lineup card and go from there. So there is an exception. It says if the continuous batting order is used, the courtesy runner must be the player who made the last out. Okay. So I want you guys, you umpires, to be prepared to, this may violate the other bullet point, the third bullet point that says the same courtesy runner may not run for both the pitcher and catcher at any time during the game. Okay, I could see where this happens, that it happens to be the same courtesy runner. Okay, if it's the second out, I mean, it says the last out, which is going to be the second out, that person's going to have to run. So don't get too tied up in this rule. Just let it happen. I'm sure there's going to be some sort of an interpretation coming out if there isn't one already, but it could violate that. It could be the same runner running for the pitcher and the catcher. You guys can all probably see that. So anyway, we'll see what happens with that, but I wouldn't get too much heartburn over it. Just treat it as anything to speed up the 3-hour minors game or juniors game or something like that. Just go with it. Okay. I think it's gonna work well for us. So with that, is there any, Rick, do we have any questions on anything there before I turn it back over to Mark?
Yeah, we do have a couple questions actually. Okay, the first question, this was asked a couple of times. Are we going to be able to see the first clinic? Is it recorded?
Yes, I believe that Mark is working with Bob Diasato to put it on the website. So we're going to have an archive of it. So you should be able to. I don't know when that's going to be. Mark, you can answer that.
Yeah, take that one, Rick. So yeah, we are going to record all the sessions. This one's being recorded right now. The first video need a little editing done to it. So I believe both of them will be able to go onto the website tomorrow. Also, what we're doing is all of the questions that we're getting, there'll be a separate document that here's the question and then the answer underneath. So between the two of them together, you'll get the full flavor of the different sessions. And then we'll record the one that we're going to have next Tuesday as well.
Okay, Mark, and I think the next question is for you as well. Will there be a presentation about all the new rules?
So all the rules, as you see on the screen right now, the courtesy runner is a new rule. So as you go through, either you were here Tuesday and saw it, or if you want to go back and watch the video or watch the video for the first time, anywhere the red is, it's a new rule, to call it out a little bit. A lot of the new rules that came up will actually be in that third session. So a little bit of a coming attraction for everyone. And then you can also go on the Little League website and pull up, if you purchase the electronic rule book app, they're also called the significant changes on the app, are all the new rule changes for this year as well. So a couple different resources, you can pull a summary of all those different rule changes coming up.
Okay, and the last question, it goes back to time of play, time of throw or time of pitch. Okay, shortstop fields the ball, throws it to second, then to first base, but for the double play. But second baseman throws it out of play. Does it become time of throw?
Yes, because that's the second play. Remember the rule, I don't know, Mark, if you can go back to that one easy enough. Remember the rule says the first play by an infielder, it's time of pitch. So the first play by an infielder in that particular play, shortstop fields the ball. Say you have runner on first and the ground ball to the shortstop. So he fields that and he throws to second base to get the out. Let's just say he gets the out at second base. So that is the first play by an infielder. So now the time of pitch stipulation goes away. So the next throw or any subsequent throws after that is going to be time of throw, unless the approved ruling down at the bottom of the screen, unless that criteria is made. Okay, but generally speaking, that's how that works.
Okay, thanks, John. That's all the questions that were presented.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put the courtesy runner back up for the folks that weren't here on Tuesday. And John, I may have missed it as you were going through. When we were talking about mandatory play and the change that's happening there, where a runner that reaches base, one of the requirements of mandatory play is that they run for at least one of their at-bats if they don't meet the other criteria. So it's, they get called out, they get put out, but running is there. If the first time the pitcher catcher reaches base, you have the courtesy runner for them, that at bat would not meet mandatory play for that player. Now they have the opportunity to go back later in the game and get it, but the courtesy runner would impact mandatory play there. So just to call that piece out, because as John said, there is, I would agree that there's going to be some additional interpretation coming out, but definitely wanted to get that piece in there before we moved on.
Yeah, no,
Now
that's a very good point, because that could cause a couple sticky situations because of the new enhanced mandatory play, the additional stipulation to it. So anyway, yes, good point, Mark.
So we just got done covering the runner, and we all know the majority of cases, to get a runner on the base, you got to start with the batter. So we're going to kick that off right now. And of course, the first thing the batter is going to do is step into the batter's box. And real quick, as you see, you get the little graphics up there that tells you which foot positions are legal, which aren't, and maybe it's just my screen, but that one on the bottom is a legal. It looks like the toes are over the line, but that was intended to be right on the line. And really, the lines are part of the box. So as long as they have their entire foot within the box or not over the line, they're in a legal starting position with that box. And yeah, really, it's in there for one reason, so that a batter doesn't take an advantage of a pitcher. And usually, it's a crowding the plate issue, and that's where we want that 4-inch gap on the small diamond and the 6-inch gap on the larger diamonds to give that batter, the pitcher, an equal chance with the batter. Always got a little bit of the zone still to hit. So the penalty here is the umpire call time and just reposition the batter in the box, asking to get their feet within the box, and then it's a play. So now we're going to start talking about some of the times where the batter could be called out going through, and this is 605B, and it's really two things: majors and above, third strike legally caught by the catcher. So that's been in Little League for many, many years. The second component is one that was added, I think it was added 3 or 4 years ago. I can pull a rule book out and tell you if somebody really wants to know the trivia there. But let's, about 3 or 4 years ago, the third strike not caught, more commonly called a drop third strike, but a third strike not caught by the catcher with first base occupied before 2 are out, the batter's also going to be called out. They're not going to be entitled to try to attempt to advance to first base on that third strike not caught there. So those two, you see the option at the bottom. Local leagues do have the option of using the minors rule, which is third strike caught or not, the batter's out. You could also put that in a major. I will tell you, John referenced what happens in, some of the inter league play. And once we reach tournament season, the third strike not caught rule will be enforced. So it's not a recommendation that I have for any board to vote not to enforce this during the regular season, because it becomes a huge disadvantage for a team if they haven't had to apply this rule all year. And then you get to games that have a little bit more competitiveness to them, and they're not, used to it, and the reactions are a little bit, less there. Another chance when the batter would be called out, and it's again 605, and it's where the batter attempts to hit a third strike and is touched by the ball. And you see, all the pictures that were pulled into this presentation, they're going to be called out, and in all these pictures, it's going to leave a mark, probably a bigger mark on a few of those players. But it is would be, a couple of the key elements, as it calls it out at the bottom screen. They attempt to hit a strike and they're touched, and they need to attempt. If it's a check swing, which would be appealable, or one that the umpire could rule on, then it wouldn't apply. They'd be awarded first base by hit by pitch. But the other piece is that it is an immediate dead ball. So the batter attempts to hit, touched by the ball, time, dead ball, and any runners that advance because of the hit batter would go back to the base they started at the time of pitch going through. So it doesn't happen a lot, but it is one that could delay the game. One of the reasons that it was included in there. It happens on a frequent basis, not every game, but definitely one that gets a little confusing. Of course, the other reason I included in there are times where a batter could be hit by the ball, hit in the hands, and we're awarding first base because so many people, talk to us about, well, the hands are part of the bat. But I think Fernando here definitely kind of shows that the hands are not part of the bat. And, if you're following along, that's what I'd want you to say right now, is the hands aren't part of the bat. Getting hit in the hand, unless you're making an attempt to hit the pitch, you're not going to get that ruling as the urban or the 40 bits of baseball talk about. So even there, as you see, Fernando is helping a little bit by pointing at the bat that I was referencing. Okay, another opportunity for the batter to be called out. You're going to see a term that is used, and it's called the batter runner. Well, of course, as soon as the batter makes contact and hits the ball, they transition from being a batter to a runner. So the term there gives you a little explanation of what the situation would be. So it's struck by or touches a fair ball. So it's a ball that goes down out in front of the plate. They're moving up the line and they're touched by it or struck by it. One thing that as we do more training with the umpires only, one thing we talk about is not calling the interference until the batter has approximately a step and a half to get out of the box. And it brings a level of fairness into the piece, because that step and a half definitely shows that the batter was hit. It wasn't one that they were going through, even though we know the box, the majority of it is in foul territory, but there is a part of it that's in fair territory. But that step and a half is what the rule of thumb or the interpretation that's used across all levels of baseball as we go through. Now, batter goes through, and we talk about, and it is seen, a batter's out when, after hitting or bunting a fair ball, the bat hits the ball a second time in fair territory. And you see the process there, that it's an immediate dead ball. No runner's going to be advanced. The batter's going to be called out. The key here is the bat hit the ball. The second comment on the screen there, if a ball hits the bat, the ball's going to remain alive, and the batter runner's not out unless interference is intentional. So they, are running and they drop the bat because they see the ball, potentially going to end up fair. They know they're going to get thrown out, so they drop the bat in front of the ball so it kicks off and goes foul. That would be one that would be an intentional act, and the batter would still be called out for interference. So as you go, it's those two things. Did the bat hit the ball, or did the ball hit the bat? And then once that is determined, it gives you what really the next course of action would be there. Again, the one at the bottom, if the bat is dropped as part of the batter exiting the box in their advance to first, and the ball goes up and hits the bat, it's a nothing. Everything remains live, and you play on there. Okay, there we go. Okay, another fun rule from the batter 6.0. So it's batter runner interference, or the runner's lane violation. And you see the feet there, and I've got 3 examples that I call out there. The one at the top next to the base is one where the batter is in the box, because the lines, just like a batter's box, the runner's lane, the lines are considered part of the box. So if they're in contact with the line and the other foot is within the lane, they're legal. You see the other 2 have to where the feet are outside the box. It may not look like that on the bottom one there, but that's the intent, to show that it's outside the box on the foul side of the line. So the rule says, in running the last half of the distance from home plate to first base, while the ball is being fielded to first base. So it's typically a pitch that is hit out in front of the plate. So it's a chop hit, or it's a bunt that's going to be in that close proximity to home plate out in front. The batter runs to the right of the runner's lane, inside the foul line on the grass, or to the left of the runner's lane, which would be on the foul territory. And they interfere with the fielder taking the throw at first base. So 2 things here. The ball must be thrown. So it can't be, the catcher can't, fake a throw, pump a throw, and say, hey, he was in the way. The actual throw has to be made, and it must be catchable. What's also called a quality throw. So if that catcher airmails it to the right field line, not going to be a runner's lane violation because it wasn't a quality throw made. And then the whole rule is intended to protect the fielder. So the interference that's going to be called protects the fielder, not the thrower. You know, the catcher, pitcher, whoever would be throwing that ball. So our next slide, I'm going to give you all a little opportunity to, in your own mind, see if there's runner's lane violation. So with the first one is the first video a case where the batter was legal or they weren't.
That's nothing.
Of course, you know, explain a little bit about the videos. You see it's the umpire staff doing. Typically, we're not going to let runners run without helmet going through. But you saw the umpire make the call that there was nothing, you know, no violation, because as you saw the runner, they were entirely within the lane, both feet within the lane. They were doing everything they should have been to advance to first base. The catcher's throw, you know, hit the runner up around the shoulder area. And again, it would be no violation. The umpire demonstrated that it is a call that's not going to be made, but thus his verbalization of that's nothing. Now the second one, can he do that?
Time! That's interference. You're out.
You know, as you watch that video, it probably went through your mind. It's like, wait a second, that runner between the two videos, what was the difference? Well, the difference there was the runner. You know, if you I'll go back a slide. You look at the first bullet point in running the last half of the distance. So this rule requires that the runner is in the entire lane for all of the distance. So on a 60-foot field, that would be the last, in running the last 30 feet of the distance from home plate to first, the last half. You know, we'll start juniors at 80 foot, so it'd be the last 40 feet. Once it transitions to the 90-foot field, it'd be the last 45 feet. But it is one that the runner must be in the entire lane for the full time. You saw that runner was out of the lane up to about the, I don't know, the 7/8 point. They stepped in the lane there to be able to reach the base. You know, it was one where it was a runner's lane violation, you know, interference on the runner, preventing the fielder from making the catch of the throw that way. So an important part to remember is they've got to be in that lane the entire distance from that halfway line all the way to the base. Okay, the next one I'm going to cover is some instances where some interference would go. So if an intact bat, in other words, a bat that doesn't break, that is thrown into fair territory and interferes with a defensive player attempting to make a play. And you see it, you know, at times more major league, but I've seen it on little league or other youth baseball fields. They swing so hard the bat comes out of their hand and it's a ball hit down the third baseline. Fielders going toward the ball, but they're also dodging the Easton or you know, the bat coming toward them. So it would be one that the batter would be called out on interference. Any runners advancing would be put back at the base they were at the time of pitch that way. A couple things that you'll see also, when a batting helmet is accidentally hit with a thrown ball, the ball is going to remain live. You'll get that in rundowns. You'll get that on balls getting fielded, thrown to a base, and the runners in close proximity to the base. Anything hitting off the batting helmet accidentally is a live ball. And you say, well, you know, Mark, isn't that the only way it's going to happen? There could be a case where a fielder picks up the ball and knows potentially they're not going to be able to get the runner out, that it may be a throw with purpose, or intentionally thrown toward the helmet. That one's probably going to be one. Now you're going to have to be there, but probably one the play would be killed, call time, and then probably somebody going to be leave the field for unsportsmanlike conduct. And then the last one, if the runner intends to interfere by throwing the helmet at the batted ball, once again, intent to interfere, it's going to be an immediate dead ball, immediate time call. The runner's going to be called out, and then runner's going to return to the last base legally touched. So the difference on that one is the runner's going to return to the last base legally touched. If it is one where the runner on first, it's a ball hit to, let's say, center field, a grounder, picking it up, and for some reason somebody takes their helmet off and tries to throw it at a ball. They've already acquired potentially second base. Well, that runner would be then pushed back to second base, because that would have been the last one they legally touched. And of course, you got to imagine that that's as far as he got. He was advancing toward third, but he only reached second in my example. So it doesn't happen a whole lot, but I wanted to make the differences, show some of the differences of helmets getting hit and helmets getting hit intentionally over the course of a game. Okay, let's talk about some illegally batted balls now. So it goes into Rule 606. And a lot of what Rule 606 covers is the illegal actions by batters. So this is one hitting the ball with one or both feet on the ground entirely outside the batter's box. That's a key. I've said it a few times that the lines of the batter's box are considered inside the box. So if the batter's foot is in contact with any of the lines, when they make contact with the baseball, they're legal. It's when it's on the ground entirely outside the batter's box. And it doesn't matter if the ball's hit fair or foul. The batter's still going to be called out. Going to be, once again, time, batter's out of the box. All the runners are going to go back to where they were at the time of the pitch, and then the batter will be called out. You see the picture here, and that's one that, that batter is going to be out. If it was on either one of the fields that we use in Little League, the big field, little field, and his foot was touching the plate, but also touching the line, that one's definitely showing that he's totally outside. It would be a legal hit. They wouldn't be called out because they're still in contact with the baseball. And I say that because in some youth groups, high school, some of the other ones, potentially Babe Ruth, Pony, USA, or Triple SA, any contact with the plate while you hit the ball, umpires are going to call them out. Little League a little bit, does follow more what the official baseball is, and that foot has to be entirely out of the batter's box when making contact with the ball. Okay, another opportunity for batter be called out for legal action, and it's interfering with the catcher fielding or throwing by stepping out of the batter's box. Let me cover that, and then I'll come back to the second one. This is one where batter swings at a pitch, does the little pirouette across the plate, runs into the catcher. That type, catcher's trying to retire a runner. That one is one that we would call batter's interference. Runners would return. The second one, any movement that hinders the catcher's play at home plate, typically on a steal from third base, to where the batter isn't getting out. They hinder the catcher's play or attempted play at home. Second piece is what I covered in that first example. But it's one where there's a myth out there that the batter's box protects the batter. And it does, depending on timing, in a sense. It's one where the batter swings, catcher comes up to throw to third. You can't, right-handed batter, you can't expect that batter to poof, disappear. He's going to be there. Hasn't done anything that he shouldn't be doing that way. So it'd be no interference that way on a catcher attempting to retire a player stealing third. So let's go on a runner at third trying to steal home, and that batter doesn't vacate the box and gets in the way of the throw from the catcher to another player, the catcher coming back to tag. And it was a pass ball that went back to the fence or away from the home plate area. That is one that the batter needs to vacate the area around home plate, going that way. And I know when I managed and coached, my easy one for the player was to say, if the ball goes to the right, you go to the left. If it goes to the left, you go to the right. In other words, go in the opposite direction, because it's your best place to be on a piece that way. But if they don't vacate and they interfere with the catcher's play at home, they're going to be called out for interference or legal action. A couple notes, contact doesn't have to be made. This is more the batter's interference that I referenced in my first example. Contact doesn't have to occur. There's got to be interference. So it could be stepping in front of the catcher. Also, a throw doesn't have to be made. Could be stepping in front, could come in contact with the catcher, but that throw to retire the runner doesn't have to be made for the interference still to be called. Okay, now the one that went in, again, I think it was about 5 years ago, and it was where the batter could be called out for the use of an illegal bat. And it is the batter enters the batter's box with one or both feet entirely on the ground with a legal bat, or is discovered using a legal bat prior to the next player entering the box. So first off, I'm going to back up a little bit. This is a good reason that umpires should be checking equipment before the game. Get any potential illegal bats. We know there's a number of players that play travel ball, do that type. And when you have a chance to watch that first video, you'll see what I talked about with the USA bat standard, the BB course standard. That get any of the legal bats out, of the bag. Because little Tommy, little Sally, maybe they forgot to take that travel ball bat out of their bag, and it's still there, and they're so excited because they're going up, bases are loaded. They do anything, and they're going to win the game, and they take the legal bat into the players. So checking equipment, that'll help a whole lot. So it's an illegal bat. It doesn't meet the specifications. The length is too long. Could be a number of reasons. It's an illegal bat. And again, on that first video that you can go back and watch if you weren't here Tuesday, I talk about the difference between a legal bat and a damaged bat. So I'm just talking about a legal bat. So it happens. Batter came into the box with legal bat. Both feet were on the ground. It's appealed, and it could be appealed by one of the teams. Also, the umpire could observe it without the defensive team at the time appealing it. The batter's out, and the penalty of the team down in the bottom section is the offense is going to lose one adult base coach. We'll talk about that on one of the future slides, that each team can use 2 adult base coaches. The first time a batter is called out for using a legal bat, you're going to lose one of the adult base coaches, and then that position will have to be covered by one of the players for the rest of the game. Not an ejection. The base coach isn't taken out of the game. They're just taken off the ability to coach the bases. The second violation in the game, the manager is going to be ejected. And then with any other violations, whoever the next manager in line is, you bring 2 illegal bats in. First manager's gone, and then the second manager would be gone, and you're down to 1 adult that way. Let me go back to the appeal. Let's say it's the final game of the Little League World Series. The USA, the West Coast, the team from San Diego is playing against Japan, and
T1.
USA, he brings an illegal bat into the box, gets a hit, and they go through, and the hit, when I should say hit, it's hit the ball, turns into a double play that way. So the defensive manager may come out and choose not to accept the play, or choose to accept the play. In other words, they would take the 2 outs versus the 1 out that is would be recorded with the batter be called out. So it's up to the manager to decide how they want to go. And as we talk to umpires and we instruct umpires, if the manager comes out and gives me any clue that he wants to accept the play. You know, Mark, I don't know exactly the rule, but I know there's something I could choose here to where I don't, you know, I can take what happened out of the bait. I'm probably going to help him. He's got enough of a clue on what he's trying to attempt to achieve that I'll help him out there that way. But it is one that I'm not going to look over the manager and say, hey, Robinaire, do you want to take the play? It's to your advantage. You know, the manager is going to have to help me out so I can help him out. So going through, that's the illegal use of the bat. John made reference earlier to some tournament. This is one as you go through and we get into the tournament season. This rule tweaks a little bit, and really the penalty is much more extreme once we get in tournament time. Same concept, but the penalties are a little bit less during the regular season versus the end of the year. Hey, Rick, I see some chat ones there, and I think I'm going to tweak it. I still have one other rule to cover up here, but I'm thinking it's better. Let's get these questions taken care of before I move into the next one. That's probably going to create that many more questions potentially.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to ask everybody to actually open the chat box on their own personal device or whatever they have. I've sent some direct chats to some of you, but the question is I think, Mark, can you unmute David Graham? David, can you ask your question about confirming that there's no rules about the fielder stopping the ball with their foot or any other part?
Andy already answered the question correctly, but you want me to restate it?
Yeah, just for everybody else.
Okay. Can you confirm there's no rule about a fielder stopping the ball with their foot or any other part of their body?
David and everybody else, I probably wouldn't have used the example that Andy did, but Andy's example is exactly right. No, there is no rule against using any part of your body, and you see it. You see some of the major league players, and if you've watched any higher levels of Little League, because that's what's broadcast, but it'll happen on the average Saturday too. A fielder dives to stop a ball and they roll over it, or they slide and don't quite get it with the glove, and their foot catches it. Yeah, everything's totally legal about a fielder stopping the ball with their foot, or as it says there, any other part of their body.
Andy, is that just your extreme version of detached equipment?
You know, if there's a fielder with a prosthetic leg and he kicks his leg off to stop the ball, then sure, right?
Yeah, that's detached equipment, right?
Okay, David, I want to live in your world. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just preparing for those edge cases.
Yeah. So, Rick, as I opened my chat box, I saw that was the only question we have. So I'll go ahead and move on now. Okay, so getting into one that I think there may be a few questions on, and it's batting out a turn, BOT. You know, and that's the rule as you read it. It's called, you know, everyday common term that uses batting out of order. And there's really, as I go through this, there's really three key words that you can probably see on the screen right now. And it's the word proper, improper, and then the next slide, I'll show the word legalized. If you understand those three concepts, batting out of turn, batting out of order is very easy to explain. And really it comes up to who's the proper batter. Once you know who the proper batter is, who should be in the batter's box at that moment, then it's easier to find what you need to do. Because once you determine there's an improper batter, then you go and you start penalizing, potentially, depending on the situation. So I'll read some of this and then I'll stop and give some examples. So the proper batter shall be called out. That's the first key piece. Even though the improper batter, somebody that shouldn't be in the box, is in there, You're not calling that player out. You're calling out who should be in the box. Thus, the proper batter. Proper batter shall be called out on appeal when an improper batter completes a time at bat. Completing a time at bat, they walk, they get hit by a pitch, they hit a home run, they stepped in the box with an illegal bat. Any of those would be a complete at bat if they were legal. But whatever ended that person's time in the batting box would be the time where the appeal would be made. And this would be the appeal must be made before the next pitch or play. So a next pitch is pretty easy. You know, the bigger diamond, a pickoff at first base is an attempted play. So you'd lose your ability to appeal that you had an improper batter in the box because of the next pitch or play. The next batter gets in the box and a pitch is thrown. I'll cover that one actually in the next example. This is one that this is at the time of bat. My first note there talks about the proper batter can take a position. So an improper batter is there. You catch it during the at bat. The count is 2 balls, no strikes. What happens then is you put the proper batter in the box. They start with the count 2 balls and no strikes and finish their at bat. Once there's no further penalty, no further action that needs to happen. I will take a side note because both of those batters, neither one would get credited with an at bat because again, on Tuesday, I covered an at bat starts with no count. So both of those, one, the improper batter definitely wouldn't get an at bat. And then the proper batter came in with a 2-0 count. So wouldn't be counted as an at bat toward mandatory play. So then on a proper appeal, you know, nullify the play. So let's say it wasn't a hit by pitch or that they actually hit the ball and runners advance. There were people on base and they move forward. Some of them may have scored. So what happens is you nullify the play. Any runners are put back to the base they were at the time of the pitch. Anybody that scored would be also put back on a base they were at the time of pitch. And then the out caused by the, or anything caused by the batter's action. In other words, the ball being hit, advance to first base, an error, any of that will be taken off. And then the proper batter would be called out. What you would allow, though, is any runners advanced not as of the actions of the improper batter. So somebody stole a base. There was a balk and runners were advanced. A wild pitch pass ball had nothing to do with the improper batter being in the box. So those actions would be allowed to stay in effect. Anything caused by the batter hitting the ball or as a result of the improper batter, you're going to take off. Anything that wasn't caused by the improper batter, you're going to let stand. So that's the first example. Second one is when the improper batter becomes a runner or is put out and a proper appeal is not made. So I'll give you 3 names. Adam, Billy, and Chuck. A, B, and C. So, we're starting the 4th inning and Adam was supposed to be the proper batter, but Billy came up in his place. Billy gets a hit. Billy gets on base somehow. Nobody appeals it. There's another pitch or another play. What then happens is the batter after Billy is now the proper batter, because as soon as that appeal wasn't made and a pitch or play occurred, Billy became the proper batter. And then the next person after Billy would be the next proper batter. Go back to what I was talking about at the beginning, that if you understand the proper, improper, and legalized, it's very easy to get through this rule. Now we go on, E on here. The proper batter is called out, whoever the proper batter was. Well, the next proper batter is who should go to the box. So my example, Adam, Billy, and Chuck. Well, if Adam was called out because Billy batted for him, who's going to come up next? Well, Adam was the proper batter. It was called out. It's whoever's after Adam would be Billy. So in my example, Billy gets 2 times in a row to hit the ball. Not always laid out that way, but you could see that happening for my example. Now, as I said, if the improper batter becomes legalized, a proper appeal is not made, the next proper batter shall be the one that follows the just legalized batter. So whoever you just legalized, the next batter would be the one after them. Okay, so those are the examples I have. Now let's just talk a little bit about what happens in real life. And it's one, I've talked about it impacting minimum play requirements and substitution, in a sense, Rule 303 and the regulation you see called out there. This is one scorekeepers and umpires should never call attention to either team that has a player that's batting out of turn or batting out of order. It's an appeal play. Even though I know little Johnny's supposed to be up there and little Eugene is coming in, I as an umpire, I can't say anything. Same thing with a scorekeeper. A tip that I would ask all of you to take back to your leagues is have the announcers announce the player who's physically in the box. Not, hey, now coming to bat would be Billy, when actually it's Charlie moving up. You're giving that team an advantage because of the announcer. And then if the scorekeeper or announcer improperly acts, it takes pretty much everything off the board there. No protests are allowed because of their action, their improper act. And that's that last bullet point. There are times if you know that Mark is up in the box and Mark likes to call out batting out of turn, Mark should be counseled before the game. As the scorekeeper or announcer, it's like, okay, Mark, let's talk about that in the last 12 games you were here and not have it happen. Maybe it's time to find somebody to replace Mark in that booth, though. So as we go through, I really got a summary slide. It goes back to what I said. If you can identify the batter in question, the proper, improper, legalized, once you get that, then it's very easy. If everything's proper, move on. If it's not, call the proper batter out, reset the last play, and then move on. Get the person after the proper batter you called out in the box and move the game. This isn't one that should burn a lot of daylight as we go forward. So Rick, that's everything I have. I don't see anything in the chat box that needed to be covered. So with that, I think we're ready for John to come up and be the starting pitcher and talk about pitchers.
Okay, I just wanted to say that was a good explanation of the batting out of turn. That one can be a little intimidating for people, but there are some examples in the rule book. So, and what I wanted to say is we are just covering some of the basics. We encourage you to get a rule book, either physical copy or online, and really study these rules, especially if you're going to umpire a baseball game, because it really, really does help you. And it keeps things fresh in your mind. We continue to do it as we go on as well. And coaches, if there's any coaches or managers in the room, I just wanted to explain one thing, that the rule book is not a secret document. It's actually available to you too as well. So anyway, you can use that as well too. And because the better you know the rules, sometimes that can work to your advantage, and especially as an umpire to know how to make a determination on a sticky situation like batting out of turn. So, okay, well, let's move on to the pitcher. And I think we may have some more world famous videos coming up later on in this part of the presentation. So next slide, please, Mark. Okay, so let's talk about some of the restrictions on players moving from pitchers to catcher and to catchers and pitchers. So any player can pitch. This is not the old rules. Years ago in Little League, there's only a certain number of people could pitch, but now anyone can pitch. Softball is a little bit different, but for baseball, anybody can pitch except someone who's caught for 4 or more innings that day. And we're pretty used to this rule. This one's been around for a little while, but I have to reiterate that 1 pitch is considered an inning. So any part of an inning that they caught is considered a full inning. So 3 innings plus 1 pitch in the 4th inning, that's considered 4 4 or more innings in that day. So if a catcher catches, and this part was kind of clarified because it wasn't really clear in the rule book, and everyone thought this was kind of a loophole. So Little League kind of clarified it that says, yes, you can actually do this. So if a catcher catches for 3 innings or less, then goes to pitch, as long as the player throws 20 pitches or less, 30 pitches for 15 and 16-year-olds, then the player can return as catcher that game and catch for the rest of the game. Even if it goes into extra innings, you can still do that. So that is legal. They clarified that. And they've also added the threshold. So you can actually threshold a kid. So if you're at 20 pitches during a batter, you can actually finish that and you can get reduced down to your lower pitch count. So the threshold provision of the rule does apply in here as well. So you just have to remember that. And as umpires, you need to know that as well too. And that's important to keep in communication with your scorekeeper and pitch counter to make sure that there isn't a violation on that. And if the player is removed as a pitcher, he can, after the, for the threshold part of it, as long as he meets those requirements, if he's removed as a pitcher, then he can return as a catcher. Okay, next slide, Mark. So along the lines of this, any player may catch. This is now catchers going to pitcher. So anyone who's pitched more than 40 pitches, and that's all age groups that day, if you pitch more than 40 pitches, you can't go into pitch. So if it's 40 pitches or less, then the player can allow to catch that game. And if a pitcher pitches more than 40 pitches in a game, then the player is not allowed to catch in that game, except in the threshold requirement. Okay, so again, that threshold does hold. This is something newer in Little League. They instituted the threshold exemption in this as well too. So if a pitcher pitches 40 pitches or less, then they can go catch in that game. And as long as they don't catch for more than 4 innings, they can actually go back to pitch in that game as well too. So anyway, they just kind of Little League just kind of clarified that. So that's been around for a little while, but you just have to know 20, 30, and 40. Just know those are kind of your marks that you got to hit. But again, good communication with your scorekeeper and your pitch counter, and you should avoid any problems in that. But you do have to remain diligent about that and make sure, because sometimes they'll try to sneak a kid in, or the manager won't realize it, that the kid is caught maybe 4 innings and he can't pitch. So it does happen quite a bit. So you just have to pay attention to that. Okay, next slide, Mark. Okay, so let's talk about pitchers. So in majors and below, once a pitcher's removed, can't return, period. So if he's gone, if he's pulled for any reason, can't return as a pitcher. That's majors and below. In intermediate and above, once the pitcher's removed, and as long as he remains in the game, they can return to pitch once per game, as long as they're not maxed out. So if they pitch 95 pitches, obviously they're not coming back, or 85, or whatever the case may be. So, so in intermediate and above, you can return, but remember that's also once per game. And then the pitch count is cumulative. It just picks up where they have left off. So, and then a newer rule, a pitcher may not pitch on 3 consecutive days, regardless of the number of pitches. So Mark, I don't know if Mark's online or not, but one of the questions that did come up, and we may try to answer this later, is 3 consecutive days. Is that 3 consecutive days? Are we talking about 3 consecutive games, or why I'd like a clarification on that, if you can.
No, it is 3 consecutive days. There was at one time in tournament season where they couldn't do consecutive games / days. But what this is calling is no one can pitch on 3 days. So you can pitch 2 in a row, but you can't throw a pitch on that 3rd day. Now, if it's 3 games over 4 days, you could pitch in all 3 games.
Okay, and that was my question as well. So, okay, so yeah, all right, that's what I kind of figured, but again, it's a little unclear on that, what that means, but thank you for clarifying that. So anyway, that's that, pretty simple stuff, and let's move on to the next slide. Okay, talk about 2 games in one day. So let's get the easy part out of the way. Intermediate and below, you can't pitch in more than 1 game a day. So that's it. So in juniors and seniors, you can pitch in a 2nd game a day. So in the case of a doubleheader, if less than 31 were pitches, if less than 31 pitches were thrown in the 1st game, then the pitcher can come back and he can pitch in the 2nd game. But again, the pitch count is cumulative. And that 30 mark is again under the threshold exemption as well. So you can threshold the kid out at 30 and still have them eligible for the next game that day. But again, that's only in juniors and seniors. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is the baseball pitchers limit. This has changed fairly recently. It used to be like age and division, but now it's just strictly age. So as umpires, you should know this, but it's going to be a little sticky sometimes because we don't know exactly who's in what division sometimes. So you could have a 10-year-old playing up in majors, and that's 75 instead of and as of now, I believe with the new rule change, I think it's you can even have an 8-year-old playing majors or 7-year-old. I think that's what it is, Mark. But anyway, you could have that. So you need to know that and keep in mind who's where and what. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Again, good communication with your scorekeeper and your pitch counter. We'll talk about what to do about that in a later slide.
It's also
And
a
then
recommendation from the district that everybody has a pitch log. Every team has a pitch log that they carry with them, which called out on that pitch log is the age of the player as well.
Yeah, so we're going to have to pay attention to that. And but anyway, those are the limits right there. It's a little bit easier now because it's just age instead of age and division. There was a little crossover there before. And then the days of rest required, it's right there on the screen. That's really not for us to decide a whole lot. That's more for the managers and league administrators, because we won't know who. Typically as an umpire, I won't know when the kid had pitched or not. We only get the ineligible at the beginning of the game, but still it's good to know. And there's the chart right there. So 7 to 14 is different from kids age 15 to 16. So that's it. Okay. Next slide, Mark. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is what to do about a pitch count. This is my recommendation. What I do before I start every game. So the league says you got to have an official pitch counter, okay, or official pitch count recorder. So that can be, I like to have a pitch counter and a scorekeeper. It can be the same person. It can be 2 different people. All right. But typically before a game as an umpire, I will ask at the plate meeting who's going to be our pitch counter, who's going to be our official scorekeeper. And then I will make sure that everyone knows that whatever the pitch counter has, that's what we're going with. Now, the manager, again, is ultimately responsible for pitch count. It doesn't matter what the pitch count recorder has, the official pitch counter has. So they're still responsible for that. If there is a violation, that's up on the manager. So it's very helpful to have someone who's knowledgeable and adept at that doing the pitch counting. But the most important thing is, as an umpire, make sure you know who that is and that's who you're going with. Okay. In a pitch count violation, it is protestable. And everyone, I think, knows about the days of rest, the threshold exception. So that's basically a speed up rule, so they wouldn't have to change the batter. So if you meet the certain criteria, it's in the rule book, you can finish the batter and still be under your day's rest there. So there's a number of examples in the rule book, so you can see that. So, but that one's been around for a while, so I think pretty much a lot of us know that. Okay, next slide.
John, let me add one thing to that
Sure.
section there at the bottom. So you see that first bullet point that says pitcher may finish the batter or the inning. Let's go, and we got Sally, the big power hitter, coming up, and the pitcher's at 34 pitches. So throws one, Sally fouls it off. Throws a second one, Sally fouls it off. Throws a third one, Sally fouls it off, and she's getting closer to not fouling it off because everyone's within like 3 inches of the right field line. And the manager says, yeah, I don't know, come here. You're not going to finish the Sally. He puts a new pitcher in. That threshold no longer applies because the pitcher didn't complete the batter. So he is going to have the number of pitches that he threw. The threshold is not going to apply because he did not finish the batter. If he would have finished the batter, then the threshold would apply. So it's important to remember that once you cross over a threshold, you gotta finish that at bat that is up right there. They've got to, be put out, or they got to reach base to be able to eligible for the threshold piece there. And there's sometimes where people forget that, and if they're not eligible for the threshold, it's the actual number of pitches that they've thrown. That was my additional point.
So be cognizant of that as an umpire. If a good telltale sign of that, if they pull the pitcher mid batter, that's should raise a little bit of a red flag, a little warning flag for you there. So that's it. Okay, thanks, Mark. Next slide, please. Okay, so an ineligible pitcher, we see this occasionally. An ineligible pitcher must be removed as soon as you notice it. So if I'm going to skip the first bullet point there. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We're going to go back to that one. So an ineligible pitcher must be removed as soon as it's realized. So if found before a ball is pitched, then you're going to remove the ineligible pitcher and no protest. Okay. If the ineligible pitcher is discovered after a live ball is pitched, remove the ineligible pitcher and a protest is allowed. So during the regular season, if there's a protest, you're just going to notate it in the scorebook and on your lineup card. The scorekeeper is going to notate it, and then they're going to it's going to go to the board of directors. During tournament time is a little bit different, and we'll talk about how to do a protest once we get to the tournament rules meeting that we'll have hopefully later on. So let's go back to the previous pitcher cannot return immediately in intermediate, junior, and senior. So to clarify that, in majors and below, if you pull a pitcher, then he's done. Okay, that's it. He's not coming back. But if in intermediate or and above, you can return. Remember, the rule states that you can return a pitcher. But say you pull that pitcher and he has maybe some pitches, he hasn't been maxed out. So if you pull the pitcher and you insert, and the manager inserts another pitcher and he's found to be ineligible, well, you can't return the previous pitcher to the mound, even though that pitcher is ineligible. You have to get another pitcher. Obviously, the ineligible pitcher isn't going to return. But you cannot, because the rule states once that pitcher is removed, the new pitcher has to face one batter until he's retired or the inning's over or whatever the stipulations there. So if you're doing the upper levels, you have to make sure that you understand that as well. So that's what that means about that. So majors and below, it's real easy. You're just going to get another pitcher, and intermediate, you have to have at least another pitcher before the previous pitcher can return. And then on suspended games, if they're resumed, the pitcher record may continue as long as their days of rest requirement has been met. Okay, next slide here. Okay, so we're going to spend a little bit of time on this here. We're going to get into box and illegal pitches. This, especially box, kind of trips up a lot of umpires. Illegal pitches are a little bit easier, but basically the difference between a legal pitch and a balk is the penalty, all right? So majors and below, we have illegal pitches. There are no balks. Intermediate and above, we have balks. And there's a possibility of a couple different illegal pitches in intermediate and above as well. So we'll get into those in a little bit. So, but backing up, so there's two legal positions, two legal pitching positions that you'll see. One is the windup and one is the set. You can see both in any division. Typically, you'll see in the upper divisions, intermediate above, you'll see the wind up with no runners on in the set position with runners on. In majors and below, it can be anything. So, but from these positions, now pay attention to these, the three criteria you see on the screen. From these positions, a pitcher may deliver a pitch to the batter, step and throw to an occupied base, or disengage the pitcher's plate with the pivot foot. And the pivot foot is basically the foot that's the throwing hand, same as the throwing hand. Okay. Now go back to bullet point number 2, step and throw to an occupied base. I want you to notice that it doesn't say from the rubber or not from the rubber. Okay. He can step and throw to an occupied base from the rubber, either a right-hander or a left-hander. You do not have to disengage the rubber to throw to an occupied base. You can, if you want to, disengage, but it is not a requirement to do that. And I think that trips up some newer umpires as well too, especially on pickoff plays. But those are basically the three things that you can do from either position at any level. Okay, next slide, Mark. All right, let's talk about, you'll see this a lot, and this has changed in recent years. So basically, the pitcher can't go to the mouth while engaged with the pitcher's plate, okay? Can't happen. It used to be you had to be off the mound. Now you can be on the mound somewhere, as long as you're not engaged with the pitcher's plate, okay? You'll see that a lot. Pitchers go to their mouth. I think it's disgusting, and especially with COVID. How are we going to handle that? Oh my God, I'm going to have wipes in my ball bags or something. I don't know. But anyway, so they can do that. What we want to see is just a wipe off. And mostly at the higher levels, intermediate and above, the kids know what they're doing, and they'll go to the mouth and then they'll wipe off, and you can see that. Okay. So anyway, but penalty for each violation, the umpire can call a ball. And then if it continues to happen, I mean, your only other recourse is an ejection, but generally it's not an issue. But again, don't make this your best call as well. This is just a little tool in your toolbox to make sure they're not, abusing it, throwing that spitball that Bill Owens liked to throw when he was playing. So anyway, that's that. Mark, next slide, please. Okay, so illegal pitches in box. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this because this kind of trips up some umpires as well. Just remember this. Illegal pitches are only in majors and below. Box are in intermediate and above, and you can have an illegal pitch in intermediate and above as well. There's a couple different times where you can have that. The only real difference is the penalty is different, and there is a manager's option on illegal pitches in majors and below as well. So there's a few things that constitute illegal pitches in box. There are others. We don't have all of them right there, but you can see on the screen, makes any motion associated with the pitch and fails to deliver the pitch. That can be a fail to set or a stop and a start. Fakes a throw to first base while on the rubber. And that's the only time where you can't step and throw, you can't feint. You can feint to other bases, to second and third all you want, but you cannot feint to first base. And a lot of the questions we get is the 3-to-1 or the spaghetti move, the first or third to first, is that legal in Little League Baseball? It is legal in Little League Baseball because of B, 805B right there, fakes a throw to first base. That's the only stipulation. You can fake to any other base. Another one you see is fail to step directly when throwing to a base. So that's what we talk about is distance and direction. And you'll see in some of the videos, we'll show how left-handed pitchers kind of thread that line when throwing to first base. A quick pitch that can happen in any division. That's you as an umpire really want to make sure that you stop the quick pitch before. Don't let him throw it. That one can be very dangerous. And the quick pitch is typically when the batter's not set and he's not paying attention. A lot of times you'll see it. You got to really be diligent in the lower divisions because a lot of times the batters are inexperienced and they're kind of nervous and they're just going through their motions and they're not looking at the pitcher. So you've got to really, really pay attention. Unnecessarily delays the game. I'm not sure exactly what the pitcher would do to do that, but you have a tool in your toolbox if you think he's purposely delaying the game, maybe to hit a daylight or a daylight restriction or something, or sundown or whatever. Without the ball stands on or stride the rubber, or wall off the rubber fakes the pitch. You really have to watch out for this one when teams try to do the hidden ball trick, okay? So pay attention to that as well too. That's really where this one kind of comes into play more often than not. And then accidentally or intentionally drops the ball. And when we mean dropping the ball, this is one thing that I like to clarify. The ball doesn't have to hit the ground, all right? If they drop the ball and then recatch it, that still can be an illegal pitch or a block, all right? It does not have to hit the ground, because it doesn't say in the rule there in 805G that it has to hit the ground. It's just accidentally or intentionally dropping the ball, all right? So, so intermediate and above, with no runners on base at the pitcher box, you don't call anything except for D and F. So D and F actually aren't even boxed, but those are the times where you can have an illegal pitch in intermediate and above, a quick pitch or without the ball standing. And so the penalties are a little bit different. We'll get into the penalties in a little bit here. All right, Mark, next slide.
Okay, for the next slide, we're going to show a couple of videos, and we're very fortunate we have contact with Trevor Hoffman to come down and demonstrate the box. But unfortunately, Trevor had to mow his grass that day, so you're going to see who we got.
Even better than Trevor Hoffman.
Yeah, if I could get the screen to work.
So we're going to start with we may have these run kind of quickly together. These are just examples of some box. The first couple of ones you see as a right-handed pitcher, the first one, that's going to be the wind-up position.
Go ahead, just talk. We're getting things
okay,
set up.
sorry about that.
Okay, here we go.
You're not sharing your screen anymore. Mark.
Yeah, I still don't have anything.
Okay, it was good. Just talk, John.
Technical snafus.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mark, do you need an IT guy to come, or gal to come
No,
over?
Barry is busy, so I got it. Do we have it now? Okay.
All right, let me change. Hold on, Mark, before you do that, let me enlarge the screen here so these old eyes can see a little bit better. Okay. All right, so the first what you're going to see is from the wind-up position. This is a legal move right here. You may take one step back and one forward and throw the pitch. That's in the wind-up. This is here. That's a legal possession, legal pitch from the set position. So this is where you're going to see most of your, stop the video, Mark. This is where you're going to see most of your violations is from the set position. Typically, you won't see a balk from the wind-up because there's no runners on. Most of the time, pitchers don't pitch from the windup with no runners on. However, you can see it sometimes with bases loaded. Sometimes players will go into the windup with bases loaded. All right. So go ahead and roll the video. So that was illegal. The last one you just saw was illegal disengaging. Now we're going to go through some of the balk moves. Excuse me, not a balk move. That is just illegal. That's stepping and throwing to a base. And that's, again, stepping and throwing. Remember, first base from the rubber, the pitcher needs to throw the ball. You cannot fake, but you can fake to second or third. That is a balk there. That's a start-stop balk right there. That one right there is the one you will most, stop the video, Mark. That's the one you will most commonly see, especially in first-year players of juniors. That is just a no-stop balk, and they'll roll right through it. So you've got to come to a stop in the set position, and it says that specifically in the definition of the set position in the Little League rule book. It must come to a complete stop. Now let's talk about that stop for a second. The rule book says must come to a complete stop. So it's very subjective. It doesn't say for 2 seconds, 1 second, discernible or anything like that. It just says it's got to come to a complete stop. So that's up to you. I can't tell you the interpretations say that a change of direction is not a stop, okay? That is not a stop. So you've got to come to some sort of a stop, and you as an umpire need to make sure that that is happening. And it is a little bit of an art form. It takes a lot of experience, and this is where a lot of umpires really are hesitant to get on the big diamond because of box. But it just takes a little practice, trial and error. We all still struggle with it a little bit at times because, especially in those later games, the attention span wanes a little bit, and sometimes we miss those things. But you've got to continue to keep diligent. So go ahead, roll the tape, Mark.
Do you want to talk about that one, John?
Yeah, roll that
Start.
back a little bit. Sorry. So this one here, I started my motion the pitcher, because that's not me. The pitcher started his motion and then stopped. That's a balk as well too. That's another start-stop balk. That is a balk because why? From the rubber, the pitcher did not complete the throw.
Oops. There's no
So
runner
run
to
through
hit.
it. You can run through all of those, or actually, go ahead. Go ahead and
Okay,
can
let's go
finish it.
video. It doesn't like you, John.
I know. I don't blame him either. See if we can just run through them all real quick again.
Yeah, I think it's up there it goes.
So that's illegal.
See if I can run it ahead a little bit.
Technical difficulties. But James did get a new camera, so I'm sure that's going to help immensely with our next videos. All right, well, let's move on to Robin Ayers as a left-handed pitcher. This one kind of stumps people a lot as well too, because the left-handed pitcher, has a little bit of an advantage picking up runners at first base. So you can see here, stop the video real quick, Mark. So here you're gonna have to watch his front foot. Now, the rule states that he's got to get distance and direction. And the same rule applies here, that from the rubber, if the left-handed pitcher is gonna go to first base, he has to make that throw from the rubber. But watch his foot. So you've got to get distance and direction. So this is a little bit of a tough call to make as well too, because the good, well-taught left-handed pitchers really push that envelope as to what's close to home and what's close to first base. So you as an umpire have to determine, and it's your judgment, did he make more of a step to first base or to home? All right. And one thing I want to talk about is in the rule book, it says deliberately deceive the runner. You have to make sure deliberately deceive the runner. Well, that's not entirely true. You should change that wording to illegally deceive the runner when trying to determine if a pitcher has balked or not. And clearly in some of those, he has not stepped. He stepped towards home. The latter ones, he's clearly stepped towards home and not towards first base. So you have to determine that as an umpire. That's clearly he stepped towards home. And that too, he's probably stepped more towards home. So he's disengaged, he can feint, and he can throw either direction, what's called an inside or an outside move. Rick, before we go on, are there any questions about that?
No, we're good so far.
Okay, all right, let's go to the next slide. We'll talk about the penalties because the penalties are a little bit different. So we'll talk about the illegal pitch penalty and the balk penalty. So an illegal pitch penalty, this particular part of it only applies to majors and below, okay? Because the illegal pitch penalty in intermediate and above is a little bit different. So the illegal pitch penalty is with runners on, it's just going to be a ball to the batter. This is where you have the manager's option. So if an illegal pitch and a pitch is thrown and the batter puts that pitch in play, the manager of the offense has the option to accept the play and decline the illegal pitch penalty. All right. So as an umpire, we're going to enforce the illegal pitch if it happens, no matter what happens, and it's going to be a ball to the batter, and basically you're resetting. But if the manager wants to accept the play, if the kid hits a home run or something like that, he's probably going to want to take it. So you have that option. The only other requirements to it is if a batter hit by the illegal pitch is going to get awarded first base without reference to the illegal pitch, it's still a ball to the batter because he threw the pitch. And if all runners, including the batter runner, advance at least one base safely, then there's not a manager's option. All right. So that's in majors and below. So we don't have a slide for the illegal pitch penalty, I don't believe, or for balk penalty, Mark. So I'm going to have to explain that to you. So the balk penalty, this is the main thing to realize. In intermediate and above, the balk penalty, there is no manager's option. All right. We are going to, as umpires, either enforce the balk or we're going to ignore it because some things have happened. So in intermediate and above, if there is a balk and the ball is not thrown, there's no pitch to the pitch added to the pitch count. Okay, if it's not thrown, you're still going to enforce the balk penalty. So say he does a stop start and you come up real big and say that's a balk and he doesn't make the pitch. Then what you're going to do is just advance all runners on base, one base. That's it. That's all you do. Just move up the runners one. And the kid stays in there and he continues with his bat. If the ball is put in play, all right, and the batter runner reaches first base and all other runners advance at least one base, we're gonna just ignore the balk. Nothing happened. If that player puts the ball in play and any of those other things, if one of the runners did not advance or the batter runner did not advance to first base, we're going to enforce the balk. So that means that we're going to move the runners ahead and the batter runner is going to come back and finish his at bat. In majors and in intermediate and above, if a pitch is thrown, that does count to his pitch count. All right. And that's one of the distinctions between majors and below. Majors and below, a legal pitch is always a ball to the batter. In intermediate and above, a balk is only going to be counted the pitch count if an actual physical pitch is thrown. All right. Again, there are no manager's options. We either enforce, as umpires, we either enforce the balk or we do not if the criteria is met, if the batter runner reaches first base and all other runners advance at least one base. And that's pretty much it. Now, you can have an illegal pitch in intermediate and above, which would be a quick pitch or not pitching from the rubber, and that's going to be a ball to the batter. Typically, you don't see those ones there, but again, you have to make sure that you watch that hidden ball trick because you got to make sure they're not on or astride the rubber. Okay. And next slide, please, Mark. All right, so visits to the defense. This has changed the last 2-3 years or something like that. You get less visits now, all right? And this is in all levels of Little League Baseball. So you get, manager coach gets once an inning, the second time in that same inning, you got to remove the pitcher. It used to be 2 and 3, but now they lowered it. So, and then you get twice to the same pitcher, you get twice in a game, and the third time in the game, you got to remove the pitcher. All right. So a couple things to notice about this. And when we get to the third bullet point there, that does kind of cause some confusion sometimes. So the first one, a manager coach, they can visit with any player on the mound. The entire team can come there if they want to. If they visit with any player, go talk to the first baseman or whatnot, that's still a visit. That's still going to be a visit, unless it's part of an injury. And if you think if the manager wants to visit his pitcher or any other player, if there's an injury, he or she is going to let you know that. And then you're going to make sure you go accompany them out there and make sure that they're just talking about the injury. All right. And then the second point there for intermediate and above, any pitcher that's re-entering, the visits are cumulative. So if you had one visit earlier in the game and then comes back in, you're gonna he only gets 2 more, or 1 more if the case may be. So anyway, and this is one of the things that causes, and we get a lot of questions about this too. At the plate umpire's discretion, when either team is granted a charged visit, all right, typically this is going to be the offensive team wants to go visit his pitcher. Okay. The manager coach of the other team may be allowed to make an uncharged visit within the duration of the original charged timeout. So in other words, if Mario's coaching and he decides he's on offense and his pitcher's struggling a little bit, he wants to go talk to him. So he's going to call timeout. We're going to charge him a visit. He's going to go talk to his pitcher. And the other team can visit with any of their other players if there's anything on base. Okay. So that first part, at the plate umpire's discretion, just ignore that. Just let him do it. All right. There's no need to get heartburn over it. As long as what's the key thing we're trying to do here? We're trying to prevent delays of the game. So as long as they're done at the same time, or even a little bit before, or even if it's a little bit after, if you've got to prod them along, hey coach, let's get going, or something like that. So there is no penalty for that whatsoever. So you can do that. Absolutely. If there's a charged visit, you can go talk to anybody you want to. So we do get a lot of questions about that, but that is the rule. That's the interpretation of it. So don't get too much heartburn about it. Just again, this portion is there just to help you if there's an egregious violation of that. But if they want to talk, let them talk, and it's real simple. Let's get the game moving. If they're not, hey coach, let's go. All right. And I think that's about it on that. Rick, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
Can the coach tell the pitcher from the dugout to fake a balk in majors?
Well, he cannot fake a balk in majors because there are no balks.
Thank you.
So, I suppose, I don't know of any other rule. If he wants him to make an illegal pitch, there's really no rule that prevents him to do that. I don't know why he would want to do that. You do have to be careful about that. Years ago, there was kind of a loophole in that, in terms of to get around pitch count, because illegal pitches were not added to the pitch count. So nowadays, there's really no advantage to do that, especially with intentional walks the way they are now. But the important thing to remember is there are no balks in majors and below. They're only illegal pitches. And let's talk about that a little bit, about the illegal pitches in majors and below. There's very few pitching restrictions on majors and below. They can do almost anything because it's closed bases. They don't have to come set. They can almost, start and stop. I think I wouldn't allow that. But there's a lot of things that they can do. So it's not as easy to do an illegal pitch in majors and below as you think. You just don't see it that often, but it's there and you should know how to do it. What really is the problem is balks in intermediate and above. And that's what I think, again, as I said before, kind of scare some umpires trying to come to the big diamond, but it's really not that tough if you go through it and look at it. There are a lot of websites, a lot of videos online that show you different examples of balks. Jim Evans is a famous umpire, and he put out years ago Jim Evans balk video. A lot of people still review that. You can get it, but you can go on YouTube and see that. It just takes practice. It really is what it does, and confidence in enforcing it. But anyway, we've all been there, and you just have to kind of, grind it out and dive in with both feet first. So any other questions, Rick?
Yeah. So how do we know the age of the pitcher? Should we ask the age when they start?
Well, you could, I would, usually what happens.
Let me take that one.
Oh, go ahead.
What
Mike.
you can do is let's go through and, not to answer it from an umpire's perspective, because to an umpire, doesn't matter. I mean, you want to ask or no because of safety, but in enforcement of the rules, managers are responsible for pitch counts. Now, before the game would be one, going back to my manager's day, I'd ask, and typically within majors, or minors, the coaches know because they know the kids, they went through the draft and that, but you can always ask. There's no reason to ask. And what I would really hope that in terms of safety, if you got to delay the game to find out if, Jose or Billy or Tommy, if they're 10 or 11 and they're pitching at the major level, I'd rather give that timeout than some that, are allowed. So yeah, you can ask. And if there's any question, ask, because once again, safety is paramount for everything we do in Little League.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, we have a job to try to avoid any protests as much as possible. So typically what's going to happen though, is your scorekeeper, the pitch counter, is going to know the age of that, they should know the age of that pitcher. And then they will, typically clue you in, hey, he's at 70 and he's, or he's at 80. We've all heard that. So yeah, probably sometimes it's going to fall through the cracks, but yeah, like Mark says, you can ask if you want to, but typically I think the scorekeeper is going to take care of it. And a lot of times the managers will as well too. So it's probably league dependent, some leagues have more volunteers than others. So you just never know. But most of the time, everyone, in tournament time, you're probably not going to have that much of an issue. But yeah, I mean, you can ask. And that's where we'll go back to what I was talking about, knowing who your pitch counter, the official pitch counter is, and who the scorekeeper is, and kind of keeping a rapport with that. And you certainly can go between, and a good time to ask is between innings as well too. Just go back there and say, hey, is anybody coming up on their pitch count or what's going on? And we do that as well with mandatory play as well. We always talk to the scorekeeper and say, hey, does the so-and-so has met mandatory play or whatnot. So that's a good way to do it. Just try to keep a rapport. I always say the pitch counter and the scorekeeper work for you. So you should have a good rapport with them. All right.
Hey, Rick, any other questions?
No, that was it from the community.
Cool.
Andy Carver had the one where he was asking if the pitcher had to take the signs for the next pitch from the catcher. By rule, Andy, it is, but it is one that, if it's not delaying the game or anything, a lot of pitchers look into the dugout or, if they're really advanced, the manager or coach may be calling out a number or calling the play. It's not going to be my best call of the day, and I hope it's no umpire's best call to say, hey, you got to take that pitch from here because you're just delaying it, because that catcher is looking over to get it from the manager that way. So not one that I've ever enforced, but if we're going to look by what's in the rule book, yeah, it says take it from the catcher. The thing is, if you really get into the rule book, there's no penalty. Just knock it off type. So again, not my best call of the day.
And Mark, let me add to that. I'm going to throw this out there to all you umpires out there, because this was a real world situation that actually happened to me last season, abbreviated season, with the first part of the season. There was a team where one of the sisters of an older sister of one of the pitchers, and I won't say what league it was, she would stand outside the fence and she was calling pitches. Now, one of the games she was doing that, I was working the plate on that, and there wasn't any delay of the game or anything like that. But it did come up where, can she do that? And I kind of pushed that up the chain of command. And all I really got from some of the bigwigs in Little League was, oh, well, that's violating the spirit, blah, blah, blah. They're not supposed to do that. Make sure you knock that crud off. Don't let it happen. But really, I didn't find any rule support that I could go to, other than a couple people said, don't do that. But that was something that came up. Can they do that? In my opinion, and this is my opinion only, if it's not delaying the game, I don't really care, where they get their signs from. how do I know they're not? She was standing real close to the dugout. How do I really know the pitcher's not looking at the dugout? But anyway, it came out because someone complained. So these are things that sometimes arise, and that old saying is sometimes you just have to umpire. These things will come up periodically. But anyway, that's what happened, and it could happen again. Who knows?
Okay, with that being the last question we have, we did say if anybody wants to stick on, we're going to close it off now so people can get. But if you want to stay on, we're here to answer any questions you have. But as I go through, just the wrap up, our next clinic, the third part of this will be next Tuesday, again, beginning at 6:45. We'll end, approximately 8:30 or so. We got a little bit long tonight by a few minutes because of the technical difficulties my fingers were having with this computer. So I apologize for that. But, really thanks to I think at one time we had about 25 people here. So thanks for you all taking the time to go through. I also have one other person to thank. And, you saw the videos, once again, the technical difficulties, but there was a lot of work that went into putting those videos together. You saw the high price talent that we brought out. But I also want to thank Evan, James' son. Evan put a lot of work. He was our cameraman, and then he spent a week editing the tape. We gave him about 6 hours of film, and he brought it down to about 22 minutes of that. So, Evan, everything you did, if you run into Evan anywhere, any of you, please, portray your thanks too, because it is a element that did add to what we're doing tonight. So thanks, Evan, for that. And again, everybody, thanks. We'll be back next Tuesday. I will work with Bob to get the replays of these videos out on the district website, along with the Q&A pieces that we have. So thanks. Everybody can drop off unless you want to stay on. We'll give some time if there's any questions we want to deal with live right now. Thanks, everybody. See you Tuesday.
Good night.
Before you guys go, if you can spread the word and get more participants in here, I think this is something we've been kicking around to maybe do in the future as part of our rules clinic, because we can get more in and over different nights instead of doing it one night. So if you guys can help spread the word through your league, we'd appreciate it as well. But thank you all for being here. And again, we're here. If you got any more questions, Mark's going to open it up. Unmute everybody, and then we can take some more questions.